Watch right now in the Front News project. The Chinese have fought their way into Ukrainian captivity. Meanwhile, drones strike the Moscow region and a military airfield in North Ossetia. And about Kryvyi Rih. Here, children killed by Putin's Russia were laid to rest. The battle for Pokrovsk, unique footage from the very heart of the war. Watch fiery, hot and blazing footage from the front line right now.
The bloody war continues, a war that Vladimir Putin and his pack have unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings, this is the Front News. This is Vladimir Timoshenko with you. In the next 30 minutes, you will find the truth about the war, which our journalists are uncovering from the hottest battle zones. So, are you ready? Then let's begin. And we start right away with exclusive material. Chinese soldiers, of course, are fighting for Russia against Ukraine, but this clearly doesn't make it any easier for Putin's terrorists. Now we will show exclusive video footage. In the Perm region, Ukrainian armed forces drones completely destroyed a column of occupiers with quadcopters and camouflage nets. What the Russian air defense was doing at that time is, of course, an open question. And also unique footage of the destruction of the enemy's command post in the Kherson region. About 30 war criminals have been eliminated. In addition, during the week, drones reached North Ossetia. Military airfields in Mozdok, as well as in Orenburg and the poor Penza region, were severely attacked. Meanwhile, hysteria continues in Russia regarding the Belgorod region. What can be said when not only ordinary Z-bloggers are panicking, but even the loyal Kadyrov supporter are loud enough? What is happening in the Belgorod region as well as in other regions of Russia? Let's watch further.
These are the shots of the destruction of the occupiers' command post in the Kherson region. Approximately 30 Russians have been preliminarily eliminated. Additionally, the Ukrainian armed forces successfully cleared part of a settlement in the Kursk region and destroyed enemy personnel. One occupier was captured in the process. But it's not just the Russians. In the Donetsk region, Ukrainian soldiers captured 2 Chinese citizens who were fighting as part of the Russian army. Boom, 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 boom. And here is my commander. Boom. According to Zelensky, there are significantly more Chinese citizens in the occupiers' units.
Considering China's human resources, they can always claim that these are nothing more than volunteers who expressed a desire to participate in combat on the side of the Russian Federation. This is supposedly Beijing's unofficial position. The USA has already responded, stating that this is a worrying signal indicating that the 2 nuclear powers continue their military technical cooperation.
Meanwhile, drones have once again visited Russia. Drones attacked the occupiers' military airfield in Mozdok, North Ossetia, as well as in Orenburg. Only the Russian Ministry of Defense traditionally stated that the situation is under control. Allegedly, 158 UAVs were shot down.
The main strikes were directed at oil refineries and military facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation. It should be noted that the strikes were directed at the Mozdok airfield, from which MiG-31s and Tu-160s are launched to carry out strikes on the territory of Ukraine, specifically targeting residential areas of Ukrainian regional centers. Therefore, this nature of the operation can be considered as preventive measures aimed at reducing missile terror against the civilian population. Additionally, there are reports of strikes on the Engels 2 airfield in the Saratov region, which has repeatedly been the focus of attention for Ukraine's defense forces.
And here in the Perm region, a Russian military convoy is ablaze. After the drone strike, a truck with quadcopters and other military equipment burned down. It's interesting. What was the much vaunted Russian air defense doing 700 kilometers from the front? A rhetorical question. The Ukrainian armed forces also struck a warehouse complex in the Kursk region used by the Russian military. As a result, several military buildings, technical equipment were destroyed, and more than 30 occupiers were eliminated.
This concerns the strikes on so-called field depots, which indicates a high level of awareness within the Ukrainian intelligence community. Moreover, this is not the first strike. It should be noted that the Ukrainian defense forces continue the tactic of delivering precise strikes both on field depots with ammunition and accordingly on the concentration sites of heavy equipment and command posts of the Russian occupiers. In addition to the strikes in the Kursk region, there were similar strikes in the Belgorod region. In the Kursk region, these are he accordingly strikes on field depots that provide logistical support to Russian units, actively participating in combat operations near the settlement of Guevo.
They remained silent about the strikes in Russia. On the contrary, they reported that the enemy army liberated the village of Guevo in the Kursk region.
At the moment, there is no objective control data that would indicate full control over this settlement. In other words, the Russian Federation is once again using the tactic of disseminating information to demonstrate certain tactical successes on the line of combat contact. This is a constant tactic of the Russian side, where assault units enter the outskirts of a settlement, raise the Russian tricolor, take photos, and then the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation spreads information about taking control of the settlement.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces continue their operation in the Belgorod region. Even Apti Alaudinov is feeling the heat about this, as he claimed there was an attempt to breach the border and that his troops heroically repelled this attack. However, it turned out that the Kadyrovites weren't even there.
The Akhmet units once again missed the Ukrainian Defense Forces units. They were moved to the operational rear of the Russian troops. The main blow was taken by Russian conscripts, not even contract soldiers. Currently, the Ukrainian Defense Forces control the settlements of Demidovka and Popovka. Fierce battles are taking place in the area of the settlement of Grakhovka. The control zone of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the Belgorod region is about 100 square kilometers. Moreover, the Russian side itself notes the intensification of strikes on the rear infrastructure of the Russian army in the Belgorod region and the redeployment of operational reserves of the armed forces of Ukraine to expand the area of presence in the Belgorod region.
And now, about something truly terrifying. In Kryvyi Rih, a farewell was held for 5 children killed by a Russian missile just the day before the city bid farewell to 4 more deceased school children. I remind you, on April 4th, the Russians struck near a playground with a cluster Iskander. This strike resulted in the deaths of 9 children and 10 adults. Another woman died as a result of a Shahid attack right during the rescue operation. 75 people were injured in the process. TSN correspondent Olga Pavlovska visited the site of the horrific Russian strike and spoke with the relatives and close friends of the deceased children. Her chilling report follows.
He loved Beatles and knew all the planets by heart. Timofey Tsvetok, the youngest victim of the missile strike on Kryvyi Rih, was only 3.
Our child was indeed very, very good. Extremely, incredibly good.
He was so fast that no one could catch him. He would run around the house like a whirlwind.
The footage of the boy being resuscitated after the explosion was seen by the whole world.
People.
He was walking home with his grandmother from the playground when the Russians struck with a cluster Iskander. Timofey died in the hospital, and his grandmother is still being saved. A poem dedicated to the boy who will never grow up is read by his great-grandfather.
No need for a little sympathy.
No need for sympathy, only anger and a just trial for the enemy.
7-year-old Arina is being buried along with her grandfather. Sergei Samodin, who spent his life saving people too, worked in the fire department. On that warm Friday evening, he was playing on the playground with his 2 grandchildren.
He was already leading them home when they came under fire.
Here he says, I'm calling, bring them, feed the children, but now it's all over, no answer. Feed the children, but now it's all over, no answer.
They were a good family, good people, good grandchildren.
They had so much life ahead of them.
The Russians struck with ballistic missiles near the playground around 7 in the evening when the street was full of people. The explosion occurred almost immediately after the alarm. There was no time to hide. 19 people became victims, 9 of them children. Irina and her grandfather died on the spot. Her cousin, 4-year-old Yaroslav, was severely injured. He is being saved in Dnipro.
We are trying to save the child's life.
Everyone around loved Irina, say her relatives and friends.
She was very kind, positive. I don't believe it. For me, it's like some kind of dream.
As if it's not happening to me.
Next to the girl on the playground, 2 more children from her school died.
Arina and Radislav were in the 2nd grade and Herman was in the 3rd. They were bright, pure children's souls that the cursed Russian Federation killed.
The cursed Russian was.
Kostya and Nikita are cousins. They are being buried together. Nikita Perekres was 15. A 9th grader, he was hanging out here after classes with friends.
It was one close-knit group. That is, this group also included other good children of ours.
I just don't know. Fortunately, there weren't other children there who were supposed to be, because they had agreed to meet there.
The boy was very good, calm, very polite.
He had no conflicts with his classmates. A very bright child.
Kostya Novikov Sirota was 16. After the death of his parents 4 years ago, his aunt took him in.
Responsible, very kind, and so hardworking that whatever you ask, he will do it.
The teenager went to study as an assistant electromechanic. At the Lyceum, they say he didn't miss a single class to thank his aunt, who became like a mother to him.
He said, "Yes, I will study well again to receive a scholarship, so that I have the means to be independent and help my guardian."
He certainly wanted independence.
The oldest of the children who died that day on the playground, Nikita Solonichenko, was 17. His father is in the military. His uncle also says, "We tried to protect the children on the front line, but we couldn't protect them in the rear."
We went from the very beginning, but we didn't think we would have to bury our children before ourselves. It would have been better if it took us, so he could live.
He was studying to be a mechanic at the automotive college. His class teacher immediately started calling the students after the explosion. Someone answered Nikita's number. Yes, but it wasn't him.
They said the boy is no longer alive.
They said the boy is no longer alive. He will forever remain in our hearts, smiling with a spark in his eyes. People are still bringing flowers and toys to the site of the tragedy. The mourning in Kryvyi Rih will continue on Wednesday as well.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Well, now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the blazing Pokrovsk front line. The situation here is traditionally extremely tense. On the Pokrovsk front, the enemy initiated clashes of varying intensity 27 times towards Alexandropol, Sergeyevka, Kotliarovka, and near the settlements of Yelizavetovka, Lisovka, Zverev, Udashnoye, Preobrazhenka, Andreyevka, and Bogdanovka. Our defenders successfully repelled 22 enemy attacks. They left the Kursk front without losses and are now destroying the occupiers on the Pokrovsk front. In their first week of operations on Ukrainian soil, they stopped Russian equipment that was advancing to assault our positions. This is the story of the artillerymen of the 117th Brigade. They are operating a British gun, which is referred to as the artilleryman's sniper rifle. How did they break out of the encirclement in the Kursk region? What is the war around Pokrovsk like? And is the enemy managing to cut off the road to Pokrovsk? The answers to all these questions are known by TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko, and her exclusive report follows.
A 155mm shell pierces the air near Pokrovsk. The gun crew loads another shell.
Oh. The smell of gunpowder is my favorite. Plus on the same ones. Come on, quickly.
Come on, quickly!
The Ukrainian infantry is being stormed by the Russians again. Armored vehicles are heading towards our positions. This is not a novelty of the Russian military-industrial complex. This is how the occupiers welded metal plates onto the vehicles to protect them from our FPV drones. But against the British gun, they are powerless.
Glory to Ukraine!
Attention, shot fired.
Shot fired!
This armored vehicle was stopped with surgical precision. The crew of this gun can truly be called aces. Although we're not talking about pilots, but gunners, because this is the British AS-90 howitzer, which covers the Pokrovsk direction. The fighters called this self-propelled artillery unit nothing less than a sniper rifle for artillerymen. It hits the target with the first shots.
This system is not jammed by electronic warfare. It is not jammed by anything at all, because it is autonomous inside and works only for this vehicle.
It targets itself without any additional actions. It has targeted, that's it.
Then we just shoot, press fire.
It has targeted, that's it. Then we just shoot, press fire.
This gun is truly unique because the artillery crew of the 117th Brigade trained on it in Britain back in 2023. This self-propelled gun went through Bakhmut, the Zaporizhzhia counteroffensive, and even Kursk.
She is the very first one in Bakhmut.
In Bakhmut, it was the very first to enter, the very first. It took everything as it should and started firing flawlessly. Then in Zaporizhzhia, it was flawless, and it arrived in Kursk after repairs.
In these shots, the AS-90 gun saved our soldiers from captivity. This was last year in the fall. The gunners were escaping from encirclement from the Russian village of Nizhny Klim and picked up everyone they could fit on the armor along the way. More than 30 soldiers and the gun crew reached our positions alive.
I watch all this from a drone. I see they stopped, raised a hand, picked up the guys, loaded them onto themselves, onto the barrel. I see someone holding on, embracing. Our guys, all of them got out. Absolutely everyone is alive, all, without a scratch.
But during the last Korean incursion, when they tried to reclaim the gunners, the self-propelled artillery unit hit an enemy mine. The crew was forced to abandon the armor, but the commander returned for it under fire from Russian FPV and artillery. Azra retrieved his Asya and is now smashing Russian positions in Pokrovshchina. In this section of the front, the fighters say, there is less work compared to Kurshchina.
We are jamming them here. We are completely jamming them here. I understand that everything is the opposite for them here, as it was for us in Kurshchina. Here everything is the opposite. They have such a salient here, and we are covering them from all sides. They can't lift their artillery or anything.
The artillery unit left Kurshchina without losses, but now they are inflicting damage on the Russians.
By ear, we hear arrivals from them and from us. That's why we are firing quite intensively here.
The crew is reloading the gun again. Now the target is an enemy mortar.
Plus, plus. Plus, plus. Come on, hurry, hurry, hurry. Attention. Fire!
Ah! Shot!
2 shots and the target is hit! In this section of the front, they forced the enemy to halt their assault and even seize the initiative from them. This is a strategic route that connects Kostiantynivka and Pokrovsk. Even though it's under enemy fire, there are still no occupying infantry there, which means the occupiers have not managed to wedge themselves between the two agglomerations of our troops.
Core, and in general, the sound quality ranks second in the rating.
Sound quality is vital.
It cuts power to 200,000 kilometer of lines. Ukraine defense, but we have casualties. Currently, we have 3 people injured, 1 killed. We continue to repel enemy attacks. In the Kharkiv and Kupiansk directions of the front, the enemy continues its military terror. In the Kharkiv direction, defense forces repelled 2 enemy assaults near Vovchansk. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy attempted 4 times during the day to advance towards our positions. In the direction of Pishchane and in the area of Zahrizov, 3 clashes are still ongoing. The battered Ukrainian Kharkiv is once again under enemy fire. Late in the evening of April 8th, Russian forces launched a massive drone strike. The enemy struck Porsh with drones in the Kyievsky, Industrialny and Osnoviansky districts of the city. Hits were recorded on civilian enterprises, warehouse production buildings and service stations. The enemy also struck, attention, a small candy factory. That's quite the military target, isn't it? A total of 6 fire outbreaks occurred. The total area of the fire is over 1,200 square meters. 2 Kharkiv residents were also injured. All the details are right now in the report from our colleagues at the television news service.
Since the beginning of April, this is already the 4th massive attack on Kharkiv. Kharkiv residents barely managed to clean up the aftermath of previous strikes when new ones hit again and again. This time, the occupiers launched 20 drones over the city. Some of them turned peaceful enterprises into ruins. It was a small candy production in Kharkiv, a local factory that operated even during the war. Sweets are no longer produced here as of today. Russian drones destroyed the workshop completely. The Osnoviansky district bore the brunt of the enemy's attack last night. 17 drones struck it. In total, there were more than 20 hits on Kharkiv.
Everything is shattered. There's no window, no doors.
We need to restore. And it takes strength, much and money to rebuild. Here, thank God everyone is okay, but everything else is fine.
In this area, there are 3 injured. A 65-year-old security guard sustained a head injury and acoustic trauma. A 46-year-old woman had an acute stress reaction, and another injured person, a 25-year-old factory worker, suffered a concussion.
Precisely in this industrial zone, since they were not working at that time, there were only security guards here. There is very significant destruction among the damages in this area. The enemy used a Jeren 2 UAV for the strike.
At least 15 private houses, a paint and household goods manufacturing enterprise, a transport company, and a car service station were also damaged. As a result of the attack, at least 6 fires broke out. The Russians targeted exclusively civilian workshops, officials say. Enterprises unrelated to military infrastructure were affected.
Firstly, they have switched almost entirely to Shaheds. This is what we have been observing over the past week. Plus, they are approaching from multiple directions, trying to bypass countermeasures and inflict damage as much as possible. The enemy is striking exclusively at civilian infrastructure.
Since the beginning of April, the occupiers have launched nearly 100 drones at Kharkiv. After the night arrivals, the aftermath is being cleared at the sites. People are boarding up windows with plywood, while specialists are collecting evidence of yet another war crime.
Well, now it's time to move to the Kramatorsk and Toretsk directions of the front. The bloody frenzy of the enemy's army continues here as well. In the Kramatorsk direction, our defenders repelled 3 enemy attacks. The enemy conducted offensive actions near Belyagora and Kuryumovka. In the Toretsk direction, the enemy tried 16 times to advance in the areas of the settlements of Druzhba and Toretsk. Currently, 3 combat clashes are ongoing. As you have already seen today, Pokrovsk is under enemy air and artillery strikes every day. The Russians are destroying the city with shelling, but they still cannot enter the residential areas. The Syecheslav paratroopers, who are defending Pokrovsk, forced the enemy to halt active assaults and even seize the initiative in battles on the outskirts. How Pokrovsk looks now and what the soldiers are doing to prevent the enemy from breaking through will be reported and shown by TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko.
Destroyed and ravaged Pokrovsk, a city that is defending itself from the Russians and has long become an active front line. Here, the topography of the streets changes daily due to constant shelling and enemy artillery and aviation. But we are now heading to the 25th Syecheslav Brigade, which is defending this city and doing everything to prevent the Russians from entering it.
Everything will be fine.
We trust the driver of our armored vehicle, Kazakh, and enter the corridor made of nets. They are here to protect the vehicles from enemy attack drones. But in such sunny weather, it's not just them wanting to destroy all living things here. And then, I tell you, I'm working on it. Once more, the lead. 2 powerful explosions make the building we're in jump. These were Russian air bombs. A few minutes before they hit the city, we already knew they were heading to Pokrovsk.
They fly from Russian territory into our territory in order to release the bombs and return.
Where is it flying? Towards us again?
Preliminarily, yes. Get ready, everyone.
In just half a day, 4 air bombs have already landed on the city, says the unit commander. But the military seems to pay no attention to the enemy aviation. Today they have a more important task: to destroy as much Russian infantry as possible.
90% of the enemy is hiding in pits under the foundation or somewhere else in such a way that visually you wouldn't say it's a shelter with personnel.
This is what the front line looks like. Columns of smoke from aviation and artillery strikes, and completely erased what once was a village. Among these ruins are the Russian shelters.
Good. Good, there's a break. Alright, plus, prepare one and stand by.
The unit's task now is to destroy anything that even slightly resembles enemy hideouts. In a few days of bad weather, they managed to accumulate in burrows under buildings and in the remaining intact houses. And to prevent this enemy infantry from storming ours, they are mercilessly burned. A little person is running.
But it's not a person running, it's a Russian Federation serviceman, ready to kill both civilians and our military. That's why I don't see anything here, it's not a person. The more we destroy them, the fewer will come to our motherland, to our land.
The Russians storm stubbornly, say the paratroopers. Even the wounded try to reach our trenches.
They are not shy, they go behind the lines, bluntly passing through our positions.
But they are still far from Pokrovsk, say the warriors. Recently, the assault actions of the 25th in Kotlinyo and Lisovka thoroughly disrupted the Russians' plans to bypass the city from the flanks. And most importantly, they prevented street fighting, say the warriors. Because if you let the enemy into the city, driving them out from the streets and houses is an extremely difficult task.
In Pokrovsk itself, there are no battles noted. They are all on the outskirts. We are actively preparing Pokrovsk for defense. A lot of effort and resources are needed to cover all areas. All, let's say, alleys, if it comes to that.
And now the drone pilot reports a hit.
Most likely it's a 300, but I don't rule out the possibility that they could be 200.
The occupiers' shelter is on fire. There were at least 2 Russians there, say the paratroopers. And by tomorrow, they will be in the General Staff statistics on the destroyed enemy. And this means that the front line near Pokrovsk remains unchanged once again.
And now we move to the Novopavlovsk and Gulyai-Pol direction of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. In the Novopavlovsk direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled 2 enemy attacks near the settlement of Constantinople and towards Bohatyr. 1 attack is still ongoing. In the Gulyai-Pol direction through Dreist, 3 combat encounters have just concluded in the area of Prevolne. At the same time, the settlements of Novodarivka and Gulyai-Pol were subjected to airstrikes with unguided rockets. Moreover, it was truly a hellish week for the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. On the night of April 9th, as a result of an attack by Kremlin terrorists, 15 private houses and 4 apartment buildings were damaged in Dnipro. A total of 11 UAVs were shot down over the region. As a result of the night attack, 15 people were injured, 8 of whom remain in hospitals. But unfortunately, that's not all. On April 10th, Russia struck the city again. Unfortunately, there is a casualty. All the details are in the exclusive report from our colleagues at the television news service.
A Russian drone hit right here, in the courtyard between the apartment buildings. Cars immediately started burning and exploding, and windows were blown out in the surrounding houses. Natalia and her husband stand next to the destroyed car. It's the only thing they have left from their past life. The couple made their way to Dnipro from the enemy-ravaged Kharkiv region.
This is the only thing we have left. The summer house is destroyed. The apartment in Kupiansk was destroyed on April 6th of this year. We were living with acquaintances here. It caught up with us here, as they say.
As soon as everything started exploding from all sides, my husband and I hid in the bathroom. That's what saved them, Natalia is sure.
When the explosions happened, I counted 17 of them. We ran into the bathroom. I said, "Oh, something is flying very loudly." It exploded, hit hard. My husband threw me to the floor and covered me with his body. The wall moved, everything fell on him. But the main thing is that we are alive.
The explosions were going off one after another. Locals say the explosions were so close that they were already saying goodbye to life.
We went to the corridor because we have a child. Then we thought that this was it because it was flying right at our house. We just hugged each other thinking that it was the end.
A second before that, I hid in a safe place. When it exploded, all the windows blew out. The children were picking up glass all night. Thank God we're alive.
The private sector of Dnipro was also affected. Drones destroyed about 15 houses here. In the middle of the yard, there's a huge crater, and next to it, a truck destroyed by the explosion. People are quickly patching up holes in the roofs and walls. Anna and her family are waiting for building materials. In their house, all the windows were blown out and the roof and walls were damaged. She says that night was hellish.
We ran to the basement, but it was already full of smoke and dust, so it was impossible to breathe there. That's why we went outside. There was already a fire here. We were carrying buckets of water afterwards. We will start repairing something now because, as you can see, the weather is like this.
As a result of the attack, 15 people were injured. Currently, 6 remain in the hospital. There is no threat to their lives, the doctors say.
Stable condition, of moderate severity, closer to satisfactory, for some people. Mainly, these are blast injuries, concussions, shrapnel wounds from glass and debris.
Since last night, utility workers have been tidying up the damaged neighborhood, and residents are hurrying to cover windows with plywood and plastic. After all, today in Dnipro, it's only 3 degrees above zero. That's
all for today. But very soon on the Front News program, there will be new, unique materials from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.